Well, let me offer a welcome to you and thank you for joining us for our second Leadership Roundtable for the Honors College this term. I want to, first of all, welcome our guest, Mayor Bill White. And for a special introduction, we've asked Dr. Sloan to come up here and say a few words. So, Dr. Sloan, if you care to take the podium.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's my privilege to be able to introduce Mayor Bill White to you. Many of you, of course, have seen him around the city, whether in the newspapers, perhaps in person or on television, but he is quite highly regarded mayor throughout the United States. He's in his third term here in Houston and has been really just positively received by both major parties. He's a very, very popular mayor. He is known as a visionary, and he's the kind of person that I think is, sad to say, increasingly rare in political life. He seems to be more interested in the work of being mayor than just in the position of being mayor. And I can't tell you what a pleasure it is to be in a city where there is someone at the helm who is willing to look at the issues, willing to look at the problems that are in the city, and then to attack them, and do so in a very positive way. It doesn't matter if it's crime, the hot spots of crime around the city, he pays attention to that, or the question of taxes, or pollution, or flood control, which is of course a major issue in Houston, or education. He pays attention. Sue and I not only pays attention, but is committed to assessing, evaluating, and then making specific plans for improvement. And it's exciting to be a citizen in this city when you have a mayor who cares so deeply and so passionately. Sue and I have had the privilege of being in the mayor's home. His wife Andrea and he are wonderful hosts. We were there for an occasion in which he was getting a lot of us to think about how to receive Iraq War veterans back, particularly the injured and wounded, back into the state and into the city, and what kinds of positive responses could we make for those heroes who had worked so hard and fought for our freedoms and had sustained serious and severe injuries, and what could we do, for example, in the educational world to try to accommodate their return and try to help them get an education. So the mayor is a very dynamic person. He and Andrea are people of faith. Their faith in church membership and attendance, those things are not incidental to who he is. His faith, his morals, his values, his ethical commitments, his convictions, those are the things that he brings to bear as he serves this great city. So, Mayor, it's such a privilege to have you here. Thank you. This is the Honors College of Houston Baptist University. They're in their second year, and again, this is one of a series of leadership gatherings. And of course, we've asked you to come and talk about leadership in public service. But I'll tell you, you could not ask for someone who is more visionary and more aggressive in dealing with challenging issues here in the fourth largest city in America, and I dare say the most dynamic and creative city in America because of our heritage, our history, which is embodied in our mayor, Mayor Bill White.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, President Sloan, and the various members of the Honors College. This is a great time to be involved in higher education. I mean, when you reflect back, now look, I'm not going to give you a guilt trip, but here's just the fact that if you look at some 7 billion people on the face of this planet, how blessed we are to be residents of this great nation, to be in higher education in this nation where we've really led the world for almost a century in higher education. People come from all over the planet Earth, and including to HBU, in order to get a higher education, because there's something about the U.S. standard in higher education that's special. And you could also take pride in the fact that, I don't care what anybody says, people who are undergraduates today have more to learn and more disciplines and more material than anybody who went to school when I did or when President Sloan did. So there's more to offer and more to learn. You're really at the cutting edge of a generation of 7 billion people that we share this globe with. Look, I thought that I'd just reflect for a few minutes with you on some principles, things that I've learned that I did not know when I was 19 or 20 or 21. Perhaps it might be of assistance to one person here or more. The topic was leadership and public service, and that's a little amorphous, but what I'm going to tell you is particular interest of those who aspire to be in a position of leadership with others. Now, leadership is a little bit different than celebrity. A lot of people confuse this. You get these polls on who's the most admired and all that, and it tends to be people who be on the magazine covers and all this. But I'm here to tell you, I'm talking about leadership, or real leadership, which is somebody who others push up the ladder to manage others, to others who entrust them with their lives and their careers. Leaders can be leaders not just in the public sector, it's not president, but they could be anybody who heads a crew at work or a small business, somebody who is in what's called middle management in some vast organizations, but they have a lot of responsibility for the lives of those whose activities they direct and plan. A person is also a leader in a family. A person can be a leader in their church or synagogue or mosque. A person can be a leader in a nonprofit organization. I've seen leaders in communities. I'll be visiting several communities tonight, something we call Neighborhood Night Out, where civic leaders, people who stood up for their neighborhoods and go to the meetings when others are doing something else and make sure that the city is responsive to the community needs. Those two are leaders. First principle that I commend to you, I say these seem like cheap words, but I'll give you specific illustrations, is trustworthiness and reliability. Now, how does that apply to anything? Well, I'll tell you, I've had a chance to hire people, and through blessings in my life, I've had a chance to choose probably 100 to 200 people who were in charge of various organizations and activities, companies, departments and governments, big areas of responsibility within the federal government of the United States. And I could go on and on and on. People who lead nonprofits and others. So if I've gotten to be, sort of experienced at something over the last 20 years, it's in looking at the pool of candidates of people who move up in the career ladder. And if that's how you measure it, there's plenty of ways other to measure it, but if that's one of the ways that it's measured, and I can tell you from sharing a lot of experiences with others who've been in my position, then there's something about reliability and trustworthiness that after a certain time in your life comes to the very front. Reliability. Think of a second of who you would want to turn to among the people you know at a time of need. By time of need, I don't mean that you're, God forbid, an MD Anderson, but I'm talking about if you need to be somewhere at some time and somebody got to fill in for you, if you missed a class assignment and you need somebody who you can call late at night and help give you some background on what you missed. If there is a personal crisis that you may have, the person who will be there for you in many ways. Those of you who've been in the workplace, the person who, if you get behind, you'd want to help catch up. Reliability. Now, for those of us who've lived a few more years, a reliability in the workplace means somebody who, if you give them something to do by a certain deadline, they're going to do it. Or if somebody says, hey, I'm in, I'll be with you, and you've seen this within your own life, that you don't need to speculate or guess or handicap the odds of their doing what they say they're going to do, but if they say they're going to do it, it will be done. Or they will tell you in advance, listen, I've come up with a problem, I bit off more than I could chew, and I'm going to help you find somebody, or you're going to have to find somebody to replace, as opposed to just being there stranded. Now I will tell you that as you enter the workplace, this is one place that, how would I say it? It's somewhere where reliability can become a habit, and make sure you have mentors who put you in that habit. Right now, outside of the city, I'm working on an organization for a Senate campaign. I think the average age, we have so many people working for us, probably average age about 25, positions at different levels. And one thing that I and the people who are in their later 20s rather than earlier 20s tend to make people know is, if there's a time for a meeting, show up on time. If you're in over your head, ask for help. If there's a deadline, meet the deadline. And this is something that is good discipline. Once you get to have good discipline in doing that, then you become, then you're one of those group of people that's reliable. And that is part of that size of reliability and trustworthiness. Because you don't think of meeting a deadline as something that comes under the big heading of ethics sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, ethics, oh my gosh, that means you don't steal, it means that you don't lie, you don't cheat, stuff like that. But reliability is an aspect of trustworthiness where somebody can count on you if you make a commitment. And that does go to the core of what ethics means to me and to a lot of other people. Second principle that I didn't appreciate as well is a principle, I probably appreciated it better than some, and I think undergraduates appreciate it quite well, is competence. Now, in order to do something reliably, then you generally have to know what you're doing. You can figure it out along the way if you spend enough hours, but knowing what you're doing and doing something in a workmanlike manner, doing something where you have pride in task, whatever the task may be, that you do it competently is a big deal. And one of the aspects of this that you can get in the habit now, if you get in the habit now, it'll help you later on, is don't think that you're, how would I put it, you're not in school just to get the highest grades. You're in school to learn, and to learn how to learn, and to be curious about what you're learning. And I say that because the most competent people who are good at what they do, I'm talking about everything from a welder to an auto mechanic to a performing artist, a musician, to the professions, all the professions, to somebody from everything, white collar, blue collar, are people who continue to learn and sharpen their saw and refine their skills throughout their life. Oh my goodness. Don't get me started in talking about the number of people that I've seen in the context where they did their best reading and most in-depth reading when they were studying for exams as undergraduates and graduates. And then when they didn't have the reading list at the beginning of the year, gosh, they're off the hook. You can learn in many ways, just not just through books. Having an attitude of curiosity in the workplace in the first job. And this is one thing where something happened to me. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's natural curiosity or something like that. that has been an enormous gift for me and has let me do more than really I ought to be able to do based on my limitations as a person. People say, oh, well, he's just so smart, or he knows this, or he doesn't know something about everything. It's not because I have a bigger brain, and it's not because of some abstract something, but somehow, somewhere, some teachers influenced me and some others. I decided that when I was engaged in a project, I would try to learn everything there was about it. And I would treat learning and mastering the skill as sort of to tell you the truth, a bit of a challenge and a bit of a game. And once you get into that habit of lifetime learning, I want to tell you, then you are really in for a treat if you do it for long enough. See, there was this one lawyer, I'll give you one illustration. There's one lawyer, I first started practicing law after I got out of law school. And there was a lawyer who, his name is Rush Record, was with a big firm downtown, and people thought of him as a genius, and clients sought him from everywhere. And I was trying to find just what was it about this fellow, Rush Record. And his colleagues would say this about him: well, you know, he wasn't the top of the class in law school, and he doesn't have the most outgoing personality, but he just, clients love him, they would say. Clients love him. They just, and so, well, but why do clients love him? Well, I'll tell you what it was. If you were in a business, it could be the pulp and paper industry, it could be the contract drilling business, it could be the any kind of manufacturing business, and whatever it may be. You came to see Mr. Record, he knew something about your business. He knew something about your business. He knew who the companies were in your business, and he knew the trends in the business. He knew how companies had performed in that business and why one was doing better than the other. So we understood immediately what the objective of the client is, and they actually learned from him maybe what their business objective ought to be. They were going to Rush Record. How did he do that? How did he do that? Well, you'd see if you walked into his office, a stack of periodicals, and they looked like dull periodicals. So they were what you call trade publications, and they were about different businesses, and he enjoyed taking that stack and reading those businesses. There's a person in town named Fayez Seraphim. Now Fayez, you know, they call him a genius. He's made billions of dollars with a B, investing his own money and others people's money. Went to school in Egypt. He wasn't originally from this country. He didn't know that many people in town when he moved to town. But he had a little bit of an idea that, oh, he's a person we'd want to go to. And when you go into Fayez's study, he's now in his 70s, there you will see a stack of annual reports of a company, and how he likes to relax at the end of the day is reading some of this stack of reports, because he's curious about different businesses. He's curious. And after a while, he may not have been the first out of chute academically, but if you are a lifetime learner, and I could tell you that in many different ways. What I'm saying in competence is refine that skills, refine the skills. And then I would say this too: hey, we all have to make choices. Many of you will have the choices that my kids, 18, 20, and 23, are making these days, of having to choose among a different palette of options you have. Some feel pressure to do so. Some think they ought to feel pressure to do so. Some parents think you ought to feel pressure to do so. But at the right time, at the right place, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't you feel good? And the answer is going to be yes. If you felt that you had invested the time and skills and energy to be really good at a particular task. And the people who take that pride in task, that sense of competence, it could be something big, it could be something small. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm going to be one of the 10 best in the country on sociology, but it could be the job that you're doing, if you're considering your best in that job, and figure out what it takes to be the best in that job at any level, then you will know a bit about competence. And the third aspect you don't learn about in school generally, except maybe because of the faith-based faith orientation of this particular campus. You have more of an opportunity than most. You may think I'm kidding on this. You may think it's a platitude. It is not a platitude. I'm about life and business and success. This is about how to get ahead. It's about how to get ahead. If you want to get ahead, learn to treat other people with respect and be interested in the people that you're around and you work with. See, the one thing that I didn't know, and that especially people of fairly high achievement on campus don't always know, is something that you will not learn in college, and you may learn the opposite. And that is, grades are important because they show that you play to win, you have drive. They could be a reflection of competence. You've learned how to learn. But intelligence is overrated, okay? The fact of the matter is, whether it be in the public setting or in any setting, leaders are those who don't have and are not required to have the best idea. If somebody wants to vote for somebody because they have, quote, good ideas, original ideas, then you're probably voting for the wrong reason. Ideas are a dime a dozen. It's people who can implement things, people who can organize people to get things done, people who can persuade people that an idea that may be around for a long time or somebody came up with may be a way to find common ground and move forward. Now, that type of skill is leadership. Leadership is not about being the most intelligent. It is not about having a good idea. Leadership is the ability to have people move as a team, to get people what you call buy-in, to understand what you're trying to accomplish. And in order to do all those and to have a real team, I want to tell you, there's no leader on earth that can pull it off for a long time, extended period of time, without learning to be interested in other people, their talents and skills, and treating them with respect. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't expect a lot from others? No. Does it mean that being nice is a substitute for competence? No. Does it being nice is a substitute for reliability? And I've seen quite a few people try to do that substitution, and it doesn't work over the long run. But does it mean that people will push you forward and people will want you to succeed if you are curious about the people you're around and you work with, if you're interested in them. Now, there was a fellow, this may sound hard for some, and I have to tell you, I'm one of the people who has to work on it. I have a lot on my plate. So this whole idea of being interested in people as individuals, sometimes you can feel sorry for yourself and full. I'm busy with this task. I'm busy with this. I'm busy with this. I have enough friends. I don't need any more friends. Having a hard time being a good friend to the friends I have. See, that's more transactional. That's more like quid pro quo. there was this, and I think there's some HBU professor actually who I listened to some tapes about a fellow named C.S. Lewis. You heard of C.S. Lewis? Is that you? Well, C.S. Lewis in a book that influenced me greatly said something that opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to something that I sort of hadn't willing to be admit, and I probably used this reference to what C.S. Lewis said more frequently in talks involving leadership and this topic than any other reference there is. He said, look, I was afraid on becoming a sort of a Christian because I figured that Christians, or people who call themselves Christian, were these nice people who were phonies because they were acting to people as though they liked them, even though they didn't really like them. You know what I mean? A phony. You know what a phony? You know what I'm talking about? Or one of these networkers who just go around and you're thinking, okay, what do they want? Or something like, boy, they didn't have a thought. Did they hear how bad that was? Or they're just sitting there smiling. He didn't want to be one of those people. And then he said, so one day I sort of resolved, okay, I'm going to fake it. And I'm going to try to be interested in people that I even don't like. And I'm just going to swallow it. That's what it says. I'm going to act that way. And he said, a funny thing happened. Funny thing happened. First, after a while, it wasn't that I had to fake anything. It became a habit. Also, I found that the more interested I was in somebody, then the more likable that they were. And then he says, of course, part of it may be that the more interested that I was in them, the more interested they were in me, and we find that likable. Do you see what I'm saying? And his point was then, look, try it. After a while, it becomes a habit, and there could be some aspects of what you might call a self-fulfilling prophecy in all this. You follow what I'm saying? And to me, I'm not here to proselytize, but I'm here to say that those people for whom treating other people with respect and being interested in other people, if somebody, you see them every day in the cafeteria, you see somebody in janitorial services, you pass a security guard every day, instead of looking at the floor, you make contact and say hi. Hope they're having a nice day. That's not necessarily phony. It may be a habit that you get into of recognizing that they exist because they are part of your life. And you know what? You may find after a while, and it's happened with me before, that you share a little bit of information about each other. You may find you have something in common, and you might find that you're both more likable and like. Now, what does it have to do with success? If people are rooting for you to succeed, you're more likely to be successful. And with that, I'll conclude. Those are 3 principles. I won't mention the 4, but I'll tell you what the heading is so we have time for any action. The last heading would have been try to do some service to others and make that part of your life. When you do that, I found people are more successful in their jobs and more successful in their families, more successful outside. Thank you for having me today.